Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. On Fridays, we talk about the product owner role in Scrum. We talk about patterns and anti-patterns that relate to ours and the team's collaboration with the product owner. And we've also put together a course to help you navigate that relationship. There's 18 modules, nearly 8 hours of tools, techniques, videos, handouts, presentations you can use to help you and your team work better with your product owner. The course is available at bit.ly/coachyourPO. All lowercase, all one word. That's bit.ly/coachyourPO. And now, on to the show, the Product Owner Show. Hello everybody, welcome to our Friday and TGIF episode this week with Richard Lizama. Hi Richard, welcome back.
Hey Vasco, happy Friday.
Happy Friday indeed. So Friday here is the Product Owner episode, so we'll end up on a high and we'll talk about a great Product Owner. But before we dive into that, share with us what might have been, Richard, the worst Product Owner anti-pattern you've witnessed in your career.
It's too much planning. Too much of anything.
So can you explain what you mean by too much planning? What's too much planning in the product owner role?
I think that it's where they try to have too much planned on their roadmap. Roadmaps change. I think we all know that, or you're realizing that. And I feel like I've worked with some product owners that, I love that they have a nice backlog, but I think that having a quarter's worth of user stories fully written out, I think that's sort of a dream. And I feel like product owners should hit a sweet spot of maybe 1 or 2 sprints, or sorry, not 1 or 2 sprints, but 2 to 3 iterations, 2 to 3 sprints planned out, ready to go at any given time. I've worked with some product owners that try to get a quarter or more. And I feel like that ends up really sacrificing a lot of valuable time that could be spent in, the foreseeable future, which to me, the foreseeable future is, 2 to 3 sprints worth.
I buy the idea that roadmaps change all the time. In fact, I see that all the time, so I know it's true. But what do you mean when you say like a time that would be useful or more useful spent elsewhere? Like what are you trying to talk about when you talk about the product owner and how they spend their time? I mean, at the end of the day, at least intuitively, shouldn't they be spending all of their time planning?
Well, yes. But when you get too granular, too far out, that's when I feel like they could be doing more thoughtfulness into like what is going to be ahead of them in the next 2 months or so. I feel like too much of something is a bad thing. I've seen, product owners, they'll get past the milestone of having, that Scrum kind of wish or Agile wish of having 2 to 3 sprints worth of stories ready to go in the backlog. But then they'll try to go, 4 to 6 fully ready to go, and then 6 to 8. And they try build this huge backlog when the requirements are changing, the business is changing on the first 2 to 3, and they're not focusing on that. And I feel like, if there just needs to be a sweet spot.
So what I hear you say is that if we describe in too much detail the let's call it the future that is far away, a quarter. You said a quarter, so let's say anything above 4 sprints is a quarter almost, right? So let's say 4+ sprints. If you're starting to plan 4+ sprints at the story level, you're probably making a lot of assumptions, right?
Correct.
And many of those assumptions might be changed as you start to get feedback from the first few stories that get implemented. What you want to focus on will change. The market might change.
Right.
The customers' demands might change. The leadership in the company might change ideas on what they want next. Like there's all kinds of these variables that once we go into planning too far out into the future, we bump into all of these inevitable changes, right? Because there's so many of them that could happen that, at least invariably one of them is bound to happen, right?
Right. That's what I'm feeling. And I've seen it where, there's so much emphasis on having like this huge, fully fleshed out backlog. What I'm really saying is I've seen product owners and development teams waste a lot of time in trying to go that far out when, like, my whole point of view is let's work on being a little more intentional and thoughtful about how far we go out. Like maybe the stuff far out, maybe that can be like we can rough estimate, get some rough requirements on that. But if it's like 4 months from now or 3 months from now, in a quarter, like let's not, like, we're not there yet. We may not work on that 3 to 4 more iterations.
And yeah, absolutely. Also, because when you plan out too much, one of the other dynamics that I have often seen happening is that we get married to the plan, right?
Yes.
And there's all kinds of bureaucracy and panic and escalations when the plan isn't followed, which if we had paid attention to history, we would know that a plan that far into the future is probably not going to be followed to the letter.
Absolutely. And one small thing that I help teams do, or when I first get with teams, I'll look at their backlog. And if they're Jira users, I will see how many sprints do they have, like how many buckets of sprints do they have? Because we've seen that plenty of times, I'm sure, where, like, let's say today is sprint 15, and you go look at their backlog in Jira and they've got 16, 17, 18, and 19 with stories in them already. And I'm like, I'll have that conversation with the product owner. It's a tough conversation. And I'll be like, hey, is there any way, what do you think about narrowing this down to just one? And we have the conversation and they go, well, why do you see it? Why should it just be one? And I'm going, well, I'm not saying it, it should be one, but like you said, and I've used that line, this kind of hints at the notion that we're married to these stories being in that sprint.
Yeah. What's preventing us from planning only one sprint ahead? Right? That's a great question. All right. Now we turn our attention to the opposite, the mirror image of what we just described. What might have been, Richard, potentially the best product owner you've ever worked with. Describe them for us.
The best product owner I've ever worked with. I've worked with a lot of great product owners. The best ones, they realize that they're a part of the Scrum team. They don't take that word owner. They don't let that word owner get to their head, and they're like, okay, I am a direct member of a Scrum team, which is the developers, product owner, Scrum Master, and us three, we're going to get this done. They realize that, because in contrast, I've worked with some that they take for whatever reason, they take that title, or they take that product owner as project manager. And, I'm responsible for everything. Who's going to work this weekend to get this done? And, those questions aren't for you to ask. It's the product owners that number one, that would be it for me. Like, they realize they're a part of the team and they collaborate and they negotiate with everybody. Number two, they're always about continuous improvement. They're always bettering themselves. Number three, they don't plan too far in advance. They keep a sweet spot. I know we just sort of went over that, but they keep a sweet spot, and they really put their focus on giving feedback to the development. They're available. They focus on giving good feedback to the developers on what they're working on. And really, yeah, I think above all else, they're available to the developers to give feedback. There's so many product owners out there that it's almost impossible to get time on their calendar. They may show up to the daily Scrum, by choice or whatever. But other than that, if they're not available to the team, then to give that feedback, then that hurts all of us.
Absolutely. So they realize they're part of the team. They focus on continuously improving. They don't plan too far in advance, and they are available to give feedback to the team, answer their questions. Those are great characteristics for a product owner. So thank you very much for sharing that with us, Richard.
Thanks.
All right, but we're getting close to the end, Richard. So do tell us before we go, where can people find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
For me, LinkedIn is the best way to really kind of get in touch. Got some, and I also participate, in some of the Agile Austin meetups. So you may see me on the Zoom call on those. Right now, I'm working on some ideas to start talking. I want to start getting into the Agile world. I feel like I've been through a lot of things, and I have some interesting experiences starting out, as the quote unquote unconventional way for one, and then flipping that into even being a staff Scrum Master and now a senior Scrum Master. Just being able to flip that within 3 years. I've got some really unique stories and things that I want to start putting into the presentation sector, like doing some presentations at Agile Austin and then submitting for talks at, Global Scrum Gathering or other conferences that are around. I don't know if it's in my roadmap yet to start doing, the Agile coaching, like building a brand or something like that. But I'd love to be able to just share my stories and help other Scrum Masters grow. I think that's where my path is going.
And there's no other way than getting started.
Yep, exactly.
And why not? You've been on the podcast already, so lots of people know you now.
Well, I hope that, I haven't been doing this for too long compared to others, but I hope that, my knowledge helps some folks. I hope everybody out there kind of gets that aha moment like I did, where I always talk to folks and I'm like, I had this aha moment. And they're like, what do you mean? And I go, I went from not feeling like I knew anything about Scrum to where just one day is the most random thing. It's like I just tripped. And all of a sudden I feel like, Neo in the Matrix, where you see all the code around you. In certain areas of Scrum and Agile. And I feel like everybody needs to have that aha moment. And if you haven't had it yet, it's coming. Just stick with it.
Absolutely. Well, Richard, it's been a pleasure to have you here on the show. So thank you very much for your generosity with your time and your knowledge.
Thanks, Vasco. I appreciate it.
One more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast is over, but there's a lot more we have to share. We have developed our own membership site where you find a community of active and engaged Scrum Masters. In this site, you get access to exclusive content and get to interact with us, your podcast hosts, as well as the best Scrum Masters in the world. Join us at scrummastertoolbox.com/podcast and keep this podcast free of advertising. See you next week for one more week full of Scrum Master tips and tricks. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.